Welcome back to our second hour of the program today. On the line with us is our buddy Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent based in Kyiv, Ukraine. He's got a video blog over on YouTube. His name is spelled Philip Ittner, PhilippIttner. That's also his Twitter handle, Philip Ittner. Phil, welcome back. I understand you're in Zaporizhzhia today?
I'm traveling currently, Tom. That's correct. I am down in the southeast battlefront on the western side of the Dnieper River, and I'm about 2 or 3 miles from the front lines currently at a hotel. And thankfully, Zaporizhzhia is kind of protected from some of the attacks. We have power, there's infrastructure, shops are open, restaurants are open, that kind of thing. But we are, make no mistake about it, very close to the front lines.
Isn't that the town where there's the nuclear power plant that the Russians had cut off once or twice?
That's absolutely right. And apparently there's talk, and it's unconfirmed at this time, that there were some explosions outside of the plant. I want to stress that, outside of the plant, not near, not on the actual grounds of the plant. And that is still, the specifics of it are still confirmed. But yes, that is Zaporizhzhia, and it's also the spot where folks may have seen about a month ago, give or take, an apartment building that was struck by a large ballistic missile and flattened about a 9-story building. Absolutely catastrophic. I went and visited it yesterday, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Wow. So there was an interesting article that suggests that, the headline was, UK says war reality sinking in for Russians. Are you hearing this, that opposition to Putin and opposition to this war in Ukraine is starting to really significantly grow in Russia? I've also seen reports that, Putin's absolute control over the media in Russia means that, support for the war is growing. I don't know what to make of these.
Getting a clear message out of Russia right now, Tom, is incredibly difficult because obviously if you stick your head above the parapet and you say anything that is counter to what the state wants to be said or heard, you're likely to end up in jail. I mean, there are opposition leaders. Vladimir Kara-Murza is a Russian opposition leader, and he is currently right now in jail awaiting sentencing for simply saying that he had compassion for Ukrainians, and he may face 25 years in prison for that. That's a clear indication of the Russian population that don't speak your mind. So what's the truth about how Russians really feel? Well, I've been covering Russia for 25 plus years, and I have friends that are Russians. The only ones who are really very frank with me are the ones who've actually left the country. And they, speaking to their relatives, again, so understand this is degrees of separation here, but there is widespread frustration and anger, but where it's directed at is a little bit difficult to discern, because it is directly at Putin and the Kremlin, or is it directly at the Ukrainians, who in many Russians' minds should just lay down and, accept the fact that they are part of the Russian world?
Right.
It's very difficult to determine, Tom.
Yeah, it seems like it might be sort of the way that America would deal with it if we had invaded Mexico. Well, we did. I mean, we took Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico from them.
As a Californian, I get it.
Yeah. It's, nationalism and all that sort of thing. There is a video of and I don't encourage anybody to watch this, but there's a video floating around of a Ukrainian prisoner of war being beheaded by a Russian soldier that is apparently extraordinarily grisly and is making news around the world. What do you know about this?
Well, so the video was put out, and there's apparently it was a video perpetrated by members of the mercenary group, the Wagner Group. Now, I have to preface this. I have not watched this video. I will not watch this video.
Same here.
I unfortunately have had the responsibility in the past to confirm the validity of decapitation videos that were conducted by ISIS or at the time Al-Qaeda in Iraq when I was working in Iraq as a journalist. I never in my life want to see another beheading video. It is something you can't unsee. I strongly urge no one to go and seek this video video out. It is incredibly disturbing. To do that to another human being is very difficult, and you can't unsee it. Now, stepping away from the fact that I haven't actually watched it and just understanding the context of what happened. Apparently, it was a Wagner mercenary who decapitated a Ukrainian prisoner of war, somebody who was not a combatant. He was already in.
It's a war crime.
It's a war crime. It is straight up a war crime. There's no getting around it. And the reaction that I have seen in Russian media, on the main channels, is to acknowledge that the video is real, because it's hard to deny, but to say that this is an isolated incident by an individual soldier who had been disturbed by the war, and they make excuses for him, with at the same time saying he should be punished, but that let's not paint all of our good Russian boys with the same.
So they're dealing with it the same way we dealt with Lieutenant Calley back in the 1970s when Nixon was president,
or Abu Ghraib, or some of the war crimes that were committed in Iraq. The difference is that the difference is, I think there is a willingness in Russia to our guys are, well, say, I guess we do it in America as well, but it's so hard to deny some of the awful atrocities that are happening in Ukraine. I was in Iraq. I was in Afghanistan. I will not deny that there were individuals that conducted war crimes, and they should be punished. I was too young to be in Vietnam, obviously, but those guys should be prosecuted and punished. But to deny that Russia's conduct is not isolated by this one beheading video, when you look at things like Bucha or Irpin or Izium.
So this is systemic. This is not anomalous.
I would argue it is systemic. I know that there's those who would argue against me, but I have covered the Russians and Russia at war. I was in Georgia. I was in Syria. Russia conducts warfare very differently than, say what you want about the West, but Russia conducts its war very differently. And I think as a pattern of a systemic, as you say, pattern of conduct, this is not isolated, and I don't think that it's just one soldier who lost his mind.
Right.
And also, in addition to that, the fact that they would publicize it, put it out there in the public,
that they were proud of it.
There's an illness.
So the final story I wanted to ask you about, and Phil, please jump in, by the way, and if there's anything that you wanted to tell me or our viewers and listeners about because I've been kind of driving this conversation.
It's your show, Tom.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, but it's if there's something that you think is important that I haven't asked you about, please always just say, hey, I got to tell you about this. But I'm wondering this leak that apparently is this Air National Guard 21-year-old Jack Teixeira of the 102nd Intelligence Wing of the Massachusetts Air National Guard is the leaker of this stuff. He's a bigot, an anti-Semite, a racist, a gun nut, right-wing hardcore guy, and was apparently trying to impress his buddies. But these leaks indicate that America has penetrated basically every level of the Russian government. And I'm wondering how that's being, in addition to spying on Ukraine, I wonder how, are these leaks affecting the war at all? Are they affecting Ukrainian or Russian morale or positions or postures?
It's still relatively early days in the fallout from these leaks. Obviously, Ukrainians are not going to be happy to hear that there has been infiltration into, and that there are those providing information to our intelligence agencies. But I doubt very much that they're going to drive their displeasure at that, given that we are continuing to provide them with financial support and military support. What it is interesting to hear the level to which they infiltrated into Russian power structure and military power structure as well. It's disturbing to hear some of the analysis about Ukrainian capacity. It's disturbing to hear about their ability to conduct war because of a lack of certain like ammunition in particular. So this is something. I mean, look, intelligence communities are intelligence communities. This should not have been put out in the public sphere. I am a journalist. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in information, in the freedom of the transmission of information. There's also something to be said for security. So we will see what the fallout from this is in the relationship between Kiev and Washington and Brussels. But as far as actually conducting the war, this information is relatively old. It does not designate any kind of plans for a counteroffensive or where the buildup will be. So it doesn't really put any Ukrainian forces at risk per se.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Now, you yourself walked into the trap of saying, speak about anything you want. Now, look, I'm in Zaporozhye. Zaporozhye is on the front lines. It is also a predominantly Russian-speaking city. I sat down over lunch today with a bunch of journalists and a bunch of people from kind of civil society. And there was an open dispute between those here in Zaporozhye who said, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We've had a relationship with the Russians. At the end of this war, we will have to continue to have a relationship with the Russians. And that was counterbalanced by a bunch of Ukrainians who said, during this time of war, the enemy cannot be given any quarter. We have to clearly indicate that this is a divorce and we are not going back to being in an abusive marriage with the Russians. So I think that was an interesting discussion for me to conduct and something I'd like to relay. I mean, it's not as easy. It's a very complicated, centuries-old relationship that has soured and now become quite bloody. But what will Russia and Ukraine be after this war? That's open to dispute and a very serious, contested argument.
Fascinating. Phil Ittner, you check out his video blog over on YouTube. Phil, thanks so much for dropping by today. It's always great talking with you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. All righty, we will be back. The abortion pill takes another hit. I'll tell you about that. And a crazy alert. Stick around.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. I'll be right back.